If you feel like self-sabotage is a part of what's happening, sit with what's the fear underneath it. So if you're overachieving and overgiving in a way that you feel might be you self-sabotaging, sit with and ask yourself questions. Get really curious about what's the fear underneath it. What are you afraid of? So today we're going to talk about self-care and burnout while you are in a gap season. This is so real because the truth is, as you are rewiring, especially if you're doing some really deep reprogramming and rewiring in your brain, you require a lot of energy to do that. And we're going to talk about some practical things that you can do and how this season has looked for me in terms of how much I've really been able to work, how it's affected my morning and evening routines, how I'm taking care of myself and asking for what I need, setting boundaries and really clearing space for the gap to do what it's meant to do. Because I think one thing that I can say from my previous self is how much trouble I had just being in a gap. Being in a gap feels almost like things kind of slow to a halt because they're almost supposed to. You have to shed some of the old ways of being and just old programs before you can adopt new ones and even have space for new ones. And as someone who really used productivity and high achieving as a way to avoid feeling certain feelings and avoid going deeper into my emotions and some wounds, slowing down felt very triggering. So we're going to talk about how to support yourself in a gap, but I want to really preface it by saying, if a gap season is a really deep one where you're really reprogramming some things to allow you to come out on the other side, a completely different version, it's going to require you to create way more space than you might be comfortable creating. And you can take that at whatever pace you need. I don't think we can rush this process. I don't think that we can rush a healing journey. And especially if your normal way of operating is to kind of tackle things head on and just give me the plan and I'm going to perfectly execute the plan. I'm just like calling myself out here. It's me. Hi, I'm the problem. It's me. And if that's your way of operating like it was mine, I think it's important to lean into what feels like the opposite of our default way of being. More slow mornings if you're able, more space than you're comfortable with, less items on your calendar, and allowing yourself to create the space that's actually needed in order to do the deeper rewiring. I love the questions that we got from our community. The first one is from Shauna Enright. I love Shauna. And this question is great. It's going to really kick us off into this conversation. She asked, my question is, how do you emotionally get rid of the exhaustion from the shift of going through the gap? It feels like there's a lot of rewiring going on in my brain and I don't have a lot to pour into my network after being social at work, which Shauna is an amazing hairdresser. She's with people, talking to people, serving people all day long. And I really feel this on such a deep level. The exhaustion, the physical exhaustion while going through a transformation is so real. And if you've been following this series, you know that how we're defining what a gap is it's like this in between. You've started a transformation journey. You're definitely not your old self, but you haven't fully embodied and created your new home, your new homeostasis in your new habits, your new way of being. And so number one, there's actual rewiring going on in your brain, which that requires a lot of energy. But then there's also this need to be aware. There's this extra awareness that takes mental and emotional energy because you're catching yourself in old patterns and you're consciously having to think about showing up in the new patterns. It's not your default mode yet. So that requires a ton of energy. And a lot of you, if you followed along on this journey and you've heard me talk about how before I found myself like really in the depth of this gap, last year, I started to feel this intuitive nudge to slow down a little bit, take things off my plate, take things off my calendar, having no idea why I was doing so. I just was really leaning into that intuition that I just needed to clear more space. Now, me being naive and being the overachiever that I am, I was like, oh, I'm clearly making space for something big and amazing to come into my life. And I still think that's the case. I just didn't realize how gappy this gap would be, and how, that's a new word, gappy. It's just like the depth of how long this transformation would take and how deep I would have to go in order to come out on the other side, the version of myself that I feel like I'm being called to step into. So for this particular gap for me, the physical effects and the exhaustion, the different levels of energy has been very real. So I want to speak to that and normalize it, because I think if we expect ourselves to show up in the exact same way and have just as much energy for the things that we normally do, we, again, as overachievers, just speaking for myself here, I can start to put a lot of pressure on myself, or I can start to use that as a weapon against myself, like I'm not doing enough, and almost make that mean that I'm not going to get the transformation I want, when actually slowing down and doing less is the transformation. That's a big part of my transformation right now. So let's talk about the exhaustion, the physical effects, and then let's talk about how it affects our ability to show up for people. And like Shauna said, be social. So I think on a fundamental level, realizing that because this is mentally and emotionally very taxing to create change, like actual change in your brain, treating yourself like a professional athlete, in a sense, is actually the way to work with this energy. It's like you're training for something. So if you were preparing your body and mind to perform at the highest levels, you would eat a certain way. You would prioritize rest as much as you can. Okay. I know Shauna, who asked this question, is a mom of young children. She also has a business that's like another young child, right? So for those of you who are in that state, I'm not saying that you have the ability to completely just get 10, I want to say 12 hours of sleep. I don't know who's getting 12 hours of sleep at night, but I would like to meet that person. I would love to be that person. But getting proper sleep, being able to prioritize wellness and self-care. I know this is going to look so different for all of us, depending on the stage of life that we're in. And I also want to bring into the conversation a part that I know a lot of us struggle with, I struggle with, which is asking for support and saying no and setting boundaries so that we can prioritize ourselves more. We can prioritize the things that we need to in order to show up the way we want to, especially in this season. So knowing that you are essentially an athlete training at the highest levels, when you are going in and you're doing this reprogramming and you're working on yourself to become a better version, it's like a professional athlete preparing for their sport. So when I think about it like that, then I don't feel the sense of guilt when, maybe I cancel a coffee meeting that I actually didn't really want to go to. And instead I use that hour to go to the gym and work out because that actually is what my body needs that day. Or saying no to more things. I don't feel the guilt around it because I'm putting it into context that this isn't me being selfish. This is actually me preparing to show up for my work and my purpose in the way that I want to. So fundamentally, it's your nutrition, your sleep, getting enough water, getting adequate rest. And I think for me, it really started, and I've shared a little bit on this journey, how I had to come to this point where I realized I was doing so much. And one of the things that had me do is disconnect from how my body felt and what it actually needed. So not paying attention to hunger cues and going far too long without meals and drinking water or stopping to go to the restroom. Like, I can't be the only one who realized that I was so in the doing in order to avoid feeling that I had disconnected from what my body physiologically needed. Not in an extreme way. I wasn't extremely under eating or any of that, but I was not eating as though I was training for my sport. I was not eating as though I was preparing to perform at the highest levels. So of course my body had trouble keeping up. Of course, I didn't have the mental clarity that I wanted to. And the moment I started to reprioritize that and realize that we talked about this in the episode where I talked about creating safety and security within your own body. The moment I started to prioritize creating safety in my body started with me, meeting my basic physiological needs. It really helped me to prioritize that in a way that I always just kind of struggled to do. And I think the reason I struggled to prioritize my own well-being at the fundamental levels is because when I slowed down enough to do that and to notice was when I started to feel some really big emotions that needed tending to. So if we go a layer deeper into, sometimes the exhaustion is also pointing us to the fact that we've been ignoring some feelings that really need to be processed and held. And whether you get support from a professional or whether you just allow yourself more space to feel. I've noticed that as I've allowed more space for the range of emotions, processing things like anger and sadness and grief, when I come back, from that emotional processing, and after I've had proper rest and I'm eating well, I have more energy overall. So checking in with yourself, is the exhaustion possibly connected to needs not being met, not eating properly, sleeping properly, just meeting those basic needs? Or is it maybe also an indication of some deeper emotions that are asking to be processed and sat with? So starting there really, really helped. And then on the social side, so let's talk about this. I've shared before, and I just was sharing a moment ago, how I haven't had the same bandwidth, energetic or mental bandwidth to work as much or as hard in the same way that I was used to when I was more in, honestly, it was survival mode, overachieving, going nonstop, and using that kind of as a badge of honor, but not paying attention to what it was actually having me avoid. So learning to set boundaries in this gap season, of a couple of them that have really served me, and I'll share this just to give you complete permission that if you need to operate in this way as well. Part of it is I don't actually know how I'm going to feel on a day-to-day basis. So I'm very loose with making commitments, and I'm just very honest with people. I think what has felt really great for me in the boundaries piece of this, protecting my energy, is that I know right now it's not possible for me to commit to something that's super far out into the future because I'm not sure how I'm going to feel or if I'm going to need more space that day. And I just let people know that, to say, hey, I'm in a bit of a cocoon season right now. I'm really integrating some deep work. And I've just been really honest with people. And either if it's a connection that I know I don't have the energetic bandwidth for right now, I'll just say that. I'll say, hey, I'm in a cocoon season. I'm so honored that you reached out. So honored you asked me to be on your podcast or asked me to, connect for coffee. I am integrating some really deep work right now, and it's just requiring me to fully focus there. I really look forward to reconnecting when I'm on the other side. Whatever that is, just really giving myself massive permission to be in a season of no. And then if it is something that I want to consider, let's say it's a social event or it's something that actually sounds aligned and it sounds like a yes, also giving myself the ability to say, hey, I'm in this cocoon season. I am processing a lot of really deep work, and I'm excited about this opportunity. Could we check in, a day or two before just to see if, I'm still able to commit? Or you'll know, whether or not that's something you can ask for, but letting it be okay on a day-to-day basis to really check in first before I think about anyone else's needs or how upset someone's going to be if I cancel. Checking in with myself first and reviewing the things that I'm committed to that day and being honest. Can I show up in this way? And if not, realizing that the most loving thing I can do for myself, the most loving thing I can do for other people, is to cancel, is to pull myself out of things, is to say no and decline amazing opportunities if I'm not able to show up in the way that I want to. And that's hard for someone with very deep-rooted people-pleasing tendencies. The Midwest in me is very strong, and Shauna is my fellow Midwest girl, so I know you feel me on this. It hasn't been easy, but ironically, the more I do that and the more I honor what I need, and just with so much love and, graciousness, say no and turn down opportunities and cancel plans when I absolutely know that I need to, it's been interesting to feel the sense of trust that I'm building with myself. and it gives me more energy to show up in the ways that I want to. So massive permission for all of us to honor our own needs first before we commit to other people's needs and what they want from us, making sure that we're finding that new balance, because I think that's actually an important part of what a gap is trying to teach us, is reorganizing the things even that we commit to and we say yes to. And yes, you will have FOMO sometimes when you know you don't have the energetic bandwidth to go and be social and you see your friends out and they invited you, but you said no. Yeah, you're going to have FOMO, but you're also probably going to get better sleep that night. So it's realizing what season you're in and knowing that there will always be new and better and more aligned opportunities on the other side if you allow this transformation to do what it's trying to do with you, for you, and in you. It's just helped me to keep my mind focused on the purpose and the intent of this gap season. The next question, Gavi asked, how do you personally know when your body needs rest and you're feeling this onset of burnout versus when you're really just scared? It's more of a fear response, and maybe you're using burnout as an excuse to self-sabotage. Ooh, okay. First of all, the fact that you have this level of self-awareness, Gavi, tells me that you are operating at a really high level. I think for the most part, people who are just defaulting to self-sabotage don't even have the awareness to ask this question and distinguish. And it's going to be different, right? It's going to be different for every person. I feel like for me, here are some questions that kind of pop into my mind. I love using questions and either journaling or, sitting kind of in more of like a silent meditation with my eyes closed, just to kind of really listen for my own answers. So if you're wondering which one it is for you, you could sit with questions like, what am I afraid of right now? And just notice what's the answer? Because the fear behind self-sabotage is usually going to point you to, well, I'm afraid this is going to fail. I'm afraid I'm going to be irrelevant if I slow down and take the rest I need. I'm afraid of XYZ. It's not going to be the same conversation as if you're truly flirting with burnout. I think if you're feeling those feelings, it is telling you something's off. It's actually telling you to pause and self-assess. I don't think, burnout and self-sabotage are the same thing, but one of the things that we can do is we can use overachieving as a way to self-sabotage, working ourselves to burnout, so then we can't show up fully the way we need to. I think it's more a question of, if you feel like self-sabotage is a part of what's happening, sit with what's the fear underneath it. So if you're overachieving and overgiving in a way that you feel might be you self-sabotaging, sit with and ask yourself questions. Get really curious about what's the fear underneath it. What are you afraid of? As crazy as it sounds, a lot of times there are actually fears associated with what we really want. So whether it's like this huge business success, you might actually have a fear underneath there. Well, okay, if I achieve this next milestone, it's going to trigger this relationship, or I'm afraid I'm going to lose it. I'm afraid of the responsibility of it. And so until we actually address the fear that's stopping us, that's blocking us from moving into that, that success, the thing we really want, then what we're doing is we're subconsciously blocking ourselves, which does actually drain a lot of our energy. And even if consciously you know that you want to move forward, you could use your constant activity or, whatever you want to call it, overachieving, as a way to sabotage you having to be responsible for those results. So sitting with the questions of, what am I really afraid of? What do I feel is blocking me? Like, what would it mean about me if I slow down and I take some space right now? Sometimes that'll give me insight into, I didn't realize, I need rest, but I'm actually afraid that if I take the rest and I take some time off, I'll become irrelevant, or people won't want to listen to me anymore, or I won't have credibility. And a lot of times, and for me, this was the case, I had a lot of my worth tied to performance. So how much I was showing up affected how worthy I felt of the results that I was getting. And so until that pattern started to break, I was always going to be in this cycle of toying with burnout, knowing I'm a really high achiever, so I can go pretty far before I actually hit burnout, but never really feeling like I was making progress forward, never really feeling fulfillment. I think it's just kind of tuning into the energy around how you're operating right now and realizing that I think burnout is always trying to signal us to something. Is it trying to signal you to a fear that needs to be addressed, or do you just really need a nap and maybe a snack and a hug? Sometimes, usually anything in life can be fixed for me with a combination of those three in any order. So you could always try that first. Get a snack, take a nap, hug someone you love, then reassess, see how you're feeling. And if burnout is happening, rest is really what you need, you're going to start to feel better. If you can't rest and you're feeling really unsettled, then it's probably something deeper that the burnout and that feeling is asking you, inviting you to look at so you can really reframe it, so you can transform it. That's been my experience. And again, hugs and a snack just will do wonders for the soul. The last question here is from Alyssa Smith, just another one of my favorites. And I love it. She said, "Yay, more gap talk, please." I love how many of you are just really resonating with this conversation, because I think so many of us are on a huge transformation journey. We've been on a transformation journey, but we're really in it right now. And I think it's so beautiful to see how many of us are in a similar season. Alyssa's question was so good because she has a lot of tools. She does a lot of work around calming her nervous system. That's her world. But she was asking, I'd love to hear you talk about getting quality sleep when there is so much unknown. I really feel that. And she said specifically, sometimes my brain just wants to be awake and processing things in the night. I don't know if this is helpful or not, because I'm just going to share how real this has been for me. I have kind of like this witching hour, I call it, between 2 and 4 a.m. And what's so just really rude about it is it also seems to be when my brain waves tend to be in a state where all my subconscious, deepest, darkest thoughts come to the surface, and they just really have a lot to say at 2 a.m. So I think because there is so much rewiring happening and there can tend to be heightened energy, and for me, it's actually been like anxious energy during this transition, my sleep definitely has been affected. I use the Oura Ring. This is not sponsored, although Oura Ring, if you would like to sponsor the podcast, I will allow it. And so it actually tracks my sleep, and it's been a helpful tool for me to see how much sleep I'm actually getting, and then also to be able to see whatever you use to track your sleep. I do think that having some sort of way to track it and actually see what's happening can be helpful, because it also allows me to see where I actually just need to take it easy that day because my sleep wasn't super restorative the night before. And it helps me to break that part of my mind that thinks I've got to push through no matter what. So in general, I think just like I was saying in response to Shauna's question, the truth is my energy overall has been more focused inward. I haven't had as much to give to my work, to my workouts, and I'm not actually sleeping every night as well as I normally would be. But with that being said, I think just really being mindful about kind of like my sleep routines. So things like not having a lot of really bright light, really using more red light tones, and taking walks first thing in the morning to really support my circadian rhythm, really watching caffeine, watching alcohol. That was something that I really noticed when I started tracking my sleep with the Oura Ring, is how even just one cocktail can really affect how deep and restorative my sleep is. So back to what I was talking about with having this mentality that you are a high performer. You're someone who is training to perform at the highest levels. That includes mentally, really addressing my health and fitness routines as such has been a big part of it. And I know that not all of these tools are going to be accessible for every single person, but I am just going to share some of the things personally that I'm doing. So walk first thing in the morning, within 30 minutes of waking up. And I make sure I drink a whole bottle of water while I'm on this walk to really, number one, get out and get some sunshine. I don't wear sunglasses. Like, I actually let the bright daylight into my eyeballs to help to support my circadian rhythm. And then usually I'll do a walk also after dinner. I noticed that walking has been really grounding and calming during this season. So the more walking I can do first thing in the morning, and then last thing I do before I really wind down for bed, has been really soothing and really grounding. And I think for me, it's just been trying on different things to see what actually helps. There's amazing, supplements. Taking magnesium has been shown to support sleep. Again, I'm not a doctor, so this isn't like an official recommendation, but working with my functional medicine doctor, really looking at my supplementation, my overall nutrition, and just making sure that it's supporting what I'm facing right now, and working with practitioners to say, hey, my sleep has been off. What can you suggest? What are some things that I can do? Making sure that you're sleeping in a really dark room. If you kind of even just research sleep hygiene, I feel like sleep is such a big topic now. You can find a lot of people talking about this. Minimizing screens. I will be honest, this is the one that I still have not adopted. And I definitely still look right at my phone while I'm laying in bed. Probably not great for my sleep, but really looking at what affects my sleep, where can I really create helpful routines to make sure that I'm maximizing the sleep that I am getting. And then practically in the middle of the night when I'm waking up and it is 2 a.m. and I'm having a lot of anxious thoughts, that's usually, again, when mine tend to come and visit, to instead of then stressing about the fact that I'm not sleeping, kind of do the same process that I would do if some anxious thoughts tended to come up during the day, which does happen, is kind of just like taking a moment, breathing into it, and just asking, okay, like, what do you want me to know? What are you trying to show me right now? I see you're trying to get my attention. Like, what is this? What is the fear? And sometimes, every night is different. Sometimes I do like just journal a little bit and I get those thoughts out on paper. Sometimes I can just kind of self-soothe or turn a meditation on or some white noise on my phone and just be able to like listen to that and fall back asleep. But I think it's normal when you're going through a lot of change for there to be disruptions. And I don't think we just have to settle for them. I do think it's back to what I was saying in the beginning, really treating this season as a season of preparation, mentally, physically, spiritually, and being a little bit selfish with how you support yourself through that season and through whatever you need to best take care of you. You are becoming a professional athlete in your respective field and in your life. You're becoming someone who operates at another level. And until those habits are ingrained, even the wellness habits of that person, that future you, it's going to take more effort in order to ground ourselves into it, but it's worth it. And what's been cool in this season is seeing how, as I've prioritized that, as I've broken habits of like just having wine at night because I don't even really want it, it's just more of a habit. I instead am really prioritizing what's going to have me show up my best and feel my best, and what's going to help support this growth journey that I'm really committed to right now. I feel the best I've ever felt. I feel more fit. I feel more healthy. And I'm actually working out less because I'm doing things that are more restorative. I'm walking more than I'm hitting the gym. I'm sleeping more and prioritizing sleep and taking naps if I need them. And as I've done that, what's been this interesting ripple effect, this hidden benefit of it, is just how much it's really built my own relationship with myself. So again, if you needed permission at all to take a nap, to go hug someone, to have a snack, or just to prioritize what you need right now in order to get the rest you need, in order to show up the way that you want, I don't think we ever need the permission, but if you were wanting it, this is your official permission slip. And I know this is going to look so different for all of us, depending on what season that we're in and depending on who's dependent on us. But I do believe that these little habits stacked throughout our day, little things that only take 3 to 5 minutes, can compound. And it's not about trying to be perfect with any of these routines. It really is making those little deposits into filling our own cup to know that a little something is better than nothing. But if you're in a gap and you're in the season of transition, and if you're in the middle part where you're really rewiring, you're unlearning and learning new things, it does require additional energy. It requires extra brain capacity, and you are doing very deep reprogramming on a cellular level. And that is going to change the way that you can show up and how you show up for people in your life. And just know that you're not meant to do it all the time at 100%. None of us are robots. And just having that grace with myself in this season and learning to love myself in the slowdown has been really, really beautiful. So I hope that helps you too.